Cool. Well, thank you guys for joining. If some more people hop on, that's fine. My plan tonight is I have a PowerPoint that I'll share. We'll go through kind of each slide, and then I think the opportunity for questions after each slide, since they're probably going to be specific, and I don't want you guys to forget. And then at the end here, couple giveaways and things like that we'll go over. So let me get this shared with you guys. All right, can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, cool. Intro to Tri Talk. Some of you have done triathlon, so if you have some more advanced questions, I'll try to help if I can. But we'll cruise through, see what we have, and if we've got advice for other folks on the call, I'm always open for that too. I think most of you know me. Susan, I'm not sure how much you know about me, but been doing triathlon for I think going on 8 years here. Done all sorts of distances, but I am fond of the 70.3 distance. I race locally. I race a lot of Ironman things. I've traveled throughout the US, done worlds, age group nationals, and all sorts of fun stuff. So I have some experience, and hopefully we can help you out and take it from there. All right. All right, so what we're going to talk about today, race distances, how to pick a race, some race day tips, transition setup, super important. We'll go through each of the disciplines, nutrition being our fourth discipline, or fifth if we're counting transitions as our fourth discipline. Coaching and kind of training tips and training plans, some rules and more questions. But like I said, we can ask questions throughout each slide. Okay, so race distances, probably, I'm gonna guess we're familiar with most of these. A lot of races now we're seeing a super sprint option, which is an option that we're seeing for newer triathletes, for children, even older folks. We've got an older woman in our community who's still racing and she does the super sprint. Good to practice those top end speeds and things like that. So I think race to race, that kind of varies what the actual distance is. But if you're signing up for that, it should be telling you in the registration. We've got our sprint Olympic, half Ironman, full Ironman. Those are pretty standard distances that we can see in this little chart. Obviously, the rest of the world talks in meters and kilometers, and we don't, but it's been kilometers on here. We may be seeing we are seeing newer races pop up that you guys may get to. The Clash Series races, those are on car race tracks usually, which are pretty cool, and those tend to have a bit of a different distance. The PTO, that's heavier focused on professional triathletes right now, but they do have some age group races, and that's 100K distance. So it's between that like Olympic and 70.3 distance. Then we have ITU, which is like short course draft legal racing. They kind of fall between sprints and Olympics depending on what race it is. So standard things, and then we're seeing some newer companies come out with some different stuff just to differentiate themselves. Any questions about distances? That's all pretty standard so far. Okay, so first things first, picking races. There's a lot that goes into it for all of us, and I think all of us have value on different things that we want to do. Some of us want to stay local, some of us want to go have experiences, some of us go with our friends. So cost is obviously a big thing that goes into racing. The cost of the race, the lodging, are we traveling by car, plane? How are we going to get our bike there? When we get there, do we want someone to look over our bike? Do we have, God forbid, something happens and we're like, spending a few more dollars at the mechanic than we expected, right? So cost, like everything in the world, is going to play a lot into this. Bike transport. So obviously, if you have a car, you can put it in the trunk or on a rack or on the roof. If you're flying, you're getting into a whole nother land of things. Um, Flying with your bike is doable. It's stressful and it costs a wide variety of dollars depending on who you're flying with and what agent you get and so on and so forth. Flights are getting better that if your bike case is the 50 pounds or under, they're not, some airlines aren't charging you for an oversized bag. Um, Others, again, like I've flown the same flight and you get a different agent and they have different thoughts on what your bike should cost. So, it's kind of up in the air when you fly. The good thing is you have your bike with you. You can check it as soon as you get it from the plane. A lot of people are putting air tags in their bikes now. So if they do get lost, they're able to track them through an air tag. I haven't done that yet, but allegedly it's just this little tag you throw in the bag and you have an app on your phone and you can see where it is. There's also things like bike flights or tri-bike transport. So some of these you drop your bike off at a shop that, like your local shop that participates in those. For us in Connecticut, I know Cycling Concepts in Glastonbury participates in one of them, but you have to drop your bike off a couple weeks before it gets to the race, and then you don't get your bike till a couple weeks after the race. So I think more times than not, it gets there safely. You're just without your bike for a long period of time. So if you only have one bike or one like road style bike or whatever, it can be a little tricky training. Those tend to cost a little more, but you don't have to invest in a case and deal with the stress of the flight. So I think it's a lot of pros and cons you have to weigh if you're flying with your bike and kind of what your goals are, what you're willing to risk, and weighing some things out. Location of the race. There's races all over the world, right? So we can, stay close to home and logistically things are easier, or we can travel and experience places we would probably never go before if we didn't sign up for a race. Distance, obviously that's going to play into it. Not every race has every distance. So, looking at those things. Weather. For me, this plays in, I know some of us are in New England. I'm not sure if all of us are. Racing in March, April, May is really tricky when you're training all winter long, mostly inside. Also, you're tending to go to warmer climates in those months where the outdoor swimming is a little better and we are not heat adapted, most likely if we're training inside in New England. So weather can play into it. It's not impossible. There's, maybe the heat doesn't bother you or there's heat adaptation things you can do, but it is definitely something to consider. I believe indoor miles are very different than outdoor miles. And yeah, you can go race off of indoor miles, but it might not be the same as racing in August for us. If you want to qualify for something, so if you want to qualify for nationals, like USAT nationals, you need to go to a USAT sanctioned race. That's not going to be your local schmokel races always, and sometimes one of them is. Usually if the race is a little pricier, it's going to be USAT sanctioned. Your good weekday grassroots races tend to be a little cheaper because they don't have a federation over them. Worlds, I think worlds for our world is often Ironman, either 70.3 or full distance worlds. So if you have aspirations for those things, you need to pick a race that's going to get you qualified for those things. And then, the last thing is USAT sanctioned. You will need a USAT license for those races. If you just want to do a triathlon and check it off your bucket list, you can pay. I know the day fee used to be $10. I don't know if it's still the same, but you can just pay your one day fee instead of the yearly license. If you plan on a full season of racing, I think the yearly license is probably worth it. All right. As far as like signing up for races too, that's just going to depend on the race. Ironman's got their own website. Your local races will have their own website. So, I think it's depending on what you're doing is depending on where to go. There's not like one cute site that has every triathlon on it. So a lot of time it's like word of mouth, social media, for like local races and things like that. Talking to your local bike shop and friends and stuff, and they could help out with registration if there's any confusion. All right, any questions here? This is a fun picture. I don't know if my screen, there we go. With all the bikes in the car. So these are like the bike cases, suitcases, food, just like, I guess that's another thing too, is if you're flying with your bike, you want a car that can fit the bike cases. Your little budget, um, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like they rent you little like box cars that may not work with a couple people and luggage in a bike box. So something to consider too, to put it into like the cost and whatnot. All right, questions there? Welcome to our friends that just hopped on. You haven't missed too much yet. We were just talking about how to pick races. All right, so then we've got race day tips here. Triathlon can be a lot of logistics. So this is all important stuff. And I think the further away and the longer the distance, the more logistics there tends to be. So if a race acquires accommodations, book them early. A race like Ironman Lake Placid, you should be booking months ahead of time. USAT Nationals, right? Months ahead of time, something that's going to draw a few thousand people. There are these cute little quaint towns. It's going to be harder and harder to find accommodations and more expensive. I book things really early, and I usually look for ones that have cancellation, even if it's a couple months before the race. That's still fine with me as I'm booking accommodations, 8 to 12 months out. Okay, athlete guide. So I think even like a lot of your local races are going to send out an athlete guide. Here in Connecticut, we have like the Lake T and Cedar Lake. They're these Thursday night grassroots races. They're not going to necessarily send you an athlete guide, but most of your sanctioned races will. Some of you have been on this call before. I always say, print out the athlete guide and highlight it and do what you need with it. It's your space to take notes, especially if you're traveling. It will give you addresses. If it's a state park, how you get into the thing. Sometimes they're a few miles long. They'll say if there's athlete briefings, so those are meetings before the races. A lot of times they will have, we line up 10 minutes before the swim start and talk to you. All your Ironman races will have a briefing where it's, the day before or 2 days before, and, 30 minutes long. They go through things about the course. They can answer questions, and it's always good to attend those, even if you're a veteran athlete. I oftentimes find they'll give you tips about the race, like, oh, this road's got a big pothole when you turn on it, or careful with this road. And, it's just, you never know what you're going to get, and you're already there. And if you want to make the most of your experience, kind of attend all the things we should be. Packet pickup, that's another great place to, chat with folks, whether that's your local race or a bigger race. People have done the race before, volunteers in the town that can help you, I don't know, with restaurant recommendations or something like that. Usually, there's people a little more in charge, or officials or things like that around, that could ask questions, or at least point you to the person to help you answer questions if you had any. Another thing is course preview. This isn't always realistic depending on where we're racing. So a few thoughts about this. If it's something local, definitely try to get out on the course beforehand. I'm racing Western Mass 70.3 here in June, and in this month sometime I'm going to go up to Springfield and ride the course. Yeah, we might have to alter it a little if there's highways or things like that, but for Springfield, I think I can ride 90% of the course. That will give me a good idea. It's 45 minutes from my house. It's kind of like, why wouldn't I do it, right? If we're traveling, that's not always the case. So especially like we're not going to go ride however many miles the day before our race. So a few things there that I like to do. I like to drive the course. That can always be fun. Or if there's a particular spot and there's like some infamous climb or something, like go find where that is and drive it with your car and see what it looks like. Another thing, some bigger races tend to have is people will make like videos, like GoPro videos of the course or something. Doesn't hurt to watch those. It's not the same as riding the course, but again, any kind of knowledge we can get about an area we don't know can be helpful. And then just seeing if there's other people who have raced it who can talk to you about it, if there's Facebook pages to join. People ask questions and then the locals will answer and give you an idea. So there's definitely ways we can get creative and preview a course, even if it isn't riding, running, or swimming it. Check the details of the on-course race nutrition. So we'll talk about nutrition a little more later. But what's on the course may not be what works for us. And I think a lot of times that's the case, right? Maybe you get lucky and the gel you use and it's your favorite flavor and that's what's on the course. Or maybe you have like a good stomach and it doesn't matter what you eat, then like kudos to you. Things are a lot less stressful for you. So yeah, that, if the athlete guide will have your on-course race nutrition, or if you, sometimes like the race director will send an email before, like I just got one for a race I'm doing this weekend and in there it said like what he'll have for nutrition. So yeah, check that out. Some people like, I'm using Ironman a lot for an example because they're just like, they're so standard in what they do. Right now their title sponsor for gels is Morton Gels. So like if you know you're doing an Ironman and you don't want to carry nutrition, then train with Morton Gels because that's what's going to be on the course, right? So some people like choose to do that, but I think a lot of times you just find what works for you and figure out a way to carry it. Okay, does the race have a Facebook page you can follow for updates? So I already touched on that. Those pages, I always say take with a grain of salt. There's a lot of comments on them. But what the way I kind of handle them is if someone's saying, different people are saying the same thing over and over again, that probably holds true for that race, right? So like the one-off comments here and there, I wouldn't get all stressed out about them. But if everyone's telling you the same thing as you're reading the comments, then that's probably true. Okay. Morning clothes bags, bike run bags. This picture is like a perfect example of what that looks like. So some races will have morning clothes bags before the swim. So you would put like your flip-flops or your sweatshirt or something in there, especially if the swim is quite a ways from transition. Your number would go on that and then they would transport it back to you. Your longer races, not necessarily in 70.3 unless there's a split transition. There might be gear bags because they need to get your bags to the finish line from the first transition. So there might be bags in that. And then an Ironman, you'll have a whole sort of bag, which is what this picture is showing. So in full distance races, you get personal needs bags. So halfway through the bike and halfway through the run, you can get a bag that has some stuff in it. So you can see in some of these pictures, it's a lot of my nutrition. It's an extra pair of socks, it's sunscreen, it's chamois cream, things, the nutrition I definitely took. The other stuff was kind of like an emergency if I needed it. So the race it'll be very clear if there's bags involved in your race. You'll get them at packet pickup. Your number has to go on them and it'll be obvious where to drop them off because there'll be like 8 zillion bags somewhere. But mostly, for our sprint and Olympic races, I would say bags are not that common. Don't forget to eat breakfast. Kind of like the rule of thumb is eating breakfast 3 hours before the start of your race. That can be quite early, depending on the race, and eating things that we normally eat on a day-to-day basis. Another thing that goes into traveling, okay, if we're staying in a hotel and we can't make eggs, like what are we gonna do? Or do we bring something we heat up? So just another thing to consider, breakfast isn't always as straightforward as it is at our house. Getting to the race early and giving yourself time. So you don't want to feel rushed. Chances are we're going to these races already a little stressed, a little anxious, a little nervous, a little excited. All those things, we don't want to add to that by like rushing around, forgetting something. So get there early, give yourself time in transition, give yourself time to kind of get the lay of the land, which leads into taking time in transition to set up. I personally set up my transition early. I'll go kind of putz around, maybe use the bathroom, say hi to some friends, go back to transition. I go through everything, double check everything, stare at it a few more times, right? I kind of go back and forth a couple times just to make sure I've got what I need and to make sure that no one else who has set up beside me has like accidentally moved my things or bumped my things. Um, if you've done some of these races, you know how cramped those little racks can get. So it's easy for someone to bump stuff. So I try to go early and set everything up, and then, as close to when transition closes, I'll go check everything again. And then asking questions to officials race morning. So you're usually, if it's a USAT sanctioned race, you will have officials there. Our local races won't have officials, but there'll still be people that you can ask questions to. But your officials are good folks to ask questions to, about rules. They might have some insight on the course, transition exits and things like that. So they're there to help us. They're there for the athletes. So don't be afraid to use them. All right. I know that was a lot for like kind of general overview race day tips. Any questions there? All right. We'll keep cruising. Okay. So transition and setups. I talk about T1 and T2 a little more in this presentation. But this will be the start of that. So in our transition, we need to keep it. Oh, why do I keep doing that? We need to keep it concise, right? So if you think of almost like a hand towel size, like your hand towel in your bathroom, kind of a long rectangle, like that's what we have to set up our stuff in, or like maybe like a sweat towel. Everyone kind of finds their flow of what they like for their transition. So this is my transition is on the left, and my friend Maggie's is on the right. So she spreads her stuff out a little more than I do. I try to stick to that like rectangle size. And I try to do what makes sense, right? And what makes sense for me may not make sense for you. This is something you have to like kind of practice and go through a few times. But I keep my bike shoes like closest to me because that's the thing I'm going to grab first. And for me, my helmet is like hanging somewhere on my bike with my sunglasses in it. So for my bike, I'm just grabbing my shoes. The water's already on there, the nutrition's already on there. For the run, you've got your race belt, which every race is going to have a number to run in. I wear a hat, and then I carry that little handheld water. So I put all of that together and on top of each other so I don't miss something I need. I also most likely will have like a gel in one of those shoes. So I have to take it out, which means I have to eat it unless I want to carry it. So I have to eat it going through transition. So I set it up. I try to be like foolproof with myself. We're putting it in piles, putting things on top of each other so I don't miss them. You'll see all sorts of things going on in transition. People will be bringing buckets and like having these big old displays. Just try to keep it simple. Keep it simple for yourself, keep it simple for those around you, right? Because we are sharing these racks, and again, they can get quite cramped. So, being considerate of the other racers, and we only need so much stuff, right? We don't need to overkill. We've got what we need, and everything else, goes in a bag, and our friend or our significant others holding it for us. A lot of people have like transition bags, right? So, I mean, you can bring a backpack or a drawstring bag or whatever, but there are bags that like have a spot for your helmet and spot for your sunglasses and spots for your computer and things like that, which can be helpful just to kind of like check and make sure you have everything. So if you're looking for a gift for yourself, you can find a transition bag. I use I don't know how you say OGO brand. It's OGIO. They're all over the place. I also learned about another brand the other day. I think it was from Pedal Industries, and they have transition bags that have like actual labels of like what needs to go in each spot, which is kind of cool. So Christine and I learned about that from Joe Johnson the other night.
Yep, that was interesting.
Yeah, yeah, then the last thing is the food in transition. So there may be some gels or whatever that, like I said, I'm stuffing them in my shoes. All right, questions about transition before we move on to swimming. So far, so good. Okay, cool. All right, swimming. So first part of our triathlon. For a lot of us, it's the hardest part or the most nerve-wracking part. So swimming, we swim in our race kits. So triathlon specific suits are designed to swim in it and dry quickly. They also, for swimming purposes, have a thinner chamois, which is like the comfortable part that is for our bike, but we need a thinner one so it dries, because otherwise we're going to be wearing like kind of a wet diaper the whole race, which we don't want. But yes, you can swim in your triathlon suit. This is also why you want to buy a triathlon specific suit. They come in one pieces and they come in two pieces. So you can find something that's comfortable for you. They come in sleeved, like I'm wearing in this picture, or they come in, sleeveless. So there's all sorts of options, but it's designed to get wet and it's designed to dry quick. Goggles seems like a simple thing, but can get a little complicated. I would say most of the time we wear tinted goggles swimming outside because of the sun and things like that. I did one race out in California where, in hindsight, I probably would have worn clear goggles. It was still pretty dark out and it was really hard to see in the tinted goggles. It just made everything that much darker. So out of all the triathlons I've did, there's maybe one that I, in hindsight, would have wore clear goggles, but most of the time we're wearing tinted goggles to protect us from the sun. And if you've ever swam outside in clear goggles in the sun, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is not fun. Something to consider with your goggles, some people wear them under the cap when they race just so they don't get kicked off. I tend to just wear mine like pretty snug, just so hopefully no one kicks me. Hopefully the water doesn't get in them, but just something to consider with the goggles with lots of other people around us. Wetsuit versus no wetsuit. So you do not need a wetsuit to participate in triathlon is the easy answer. Wetsuits do provide us some buoyancy, and for a lot of us, it's like a safety measure for us. It's like our thunder blanket. It just makes us feel a little safer in the water. If you have the means to get a wetsuit, it definitely doesn't hurt. The more competitive you get, if the race is quote unquote wetsuit legal, you're wearing your wetsuit or your coach will get really mad at you because your wetsuit does have an advantage over not wearing a wetsuit. When we get into sanctioned races, there's some rules around wetsuits. So for some of us, this may never be a factor if we just want to race local. For some of us, this becomes more of a thing. There's different temperature thresholds where, it's wetsuit optional. If it gets too hot, you're not allowed to wear a wetsuit at all. And then if it's too cold, it's a mandatory wetsuit. So depending on the race you're doing, most of the time you'll know. Like around here, if you're swimming in the summer, it's going to be wetsuit optional. Very, very rarely is it too hot. Same thing with like the too cold. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So just be aware, if we're traveling for races, kind of taking a look at the temperature. But if you have a wetsuit, always bring your wetsuit because things can change last minute. But again, if we're just getting into triathlon, we're doing a local race, you do not need a wetsuit to participate at all. So don't go run out and spend a few $100s on a wetsuit or let that preventing you from racing. Booties and caps are things to keep us a little warmer. Again, depending on where we're going, I'm going down a race next weekend or this weekend in New Jersey. going to be a little cold, but there's also some rules around booties and caps too for qualifications. This is a race that can qualify you for a world championship. So those are just all things you have to consider. In some races, they'll say, hey, you can wear, if you're not allowed to wear a wetsuit because it's too hot, you can choose to wear your wetsuit and you're not going to be eligible for age group awards, right? So there's certain races will do certain things. So again, if you got a wetsuit, you want to wear it, even if you don't have to, you don't care about age group awards, wear it, be comfortable, and allow yourself to have fun in the race. But these are all things you'll learn as you race more, do sanctioned races, read athlete guides, and things like that. All right, open water tips versus pool tips. I think a lot of us start swimming in a pool just to learn how to breathe and get comfortable and build up some endurance. And then we go outside to a lake or a river or an ocean and we're like, oh my God, you can't see the bottom. There's fish, there's sun, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? So there's a few things to keep in mind, right? If you're able to get into open water swimming, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. If you're on this call and you're in Connecticut, we can give you all the spots to go swim. If there's a will, there's a way. We'll get you in the open water before your race for sure. I know in some states this can be more challenging. I went to school in Tennessee and there was not open water swimming, right? It was very, very hard to find a place. Whereas I know Connecticut, we're pretty lucky. So definitely practicing open water before we get into a race. Another thing we could practice when we're open water is hopefully you've got some buddies to go with and practice swimming close to each other, touching each other a little. We're not trying to hurt each other, but pull each other's toes, bump into each other, get comfortable with having folks around you because that's what's going to happen in a race. In the open water, we want to practice our sighting too. So, if the lake's got those little jumpy things, like swim out to the jumpy thing, and every once in a while we lift our head out and look at the little jumpy thing in the lake, or you pick a house that you want to swim to, because when we're racing, we're going to have buoys around that we're going to need to be sighting to help us stay on track. In the pool, we are able to practice sighting in the sense that we can practice using those muscles, right? So keeping our head down and swimming is a lot different than lifting our head out of the water and looking to see where we are. So in the pool, we can do that once a lap or a couple times a lap where we just lift our head out of the water and, look to the end of the pool. I also have known people to put a sticky note or something, like a bright colored Post-it note at the end of the lane. And so when they lift their head up, they're citing that Post-it note. We could probably talk about swim tips for days, but those are kind of some of the basic ones. The pool's great, to help us get a little quicker, to help us build some endurance, and get comfortable breathing, but we really need to get into some open water if that's most of our triathlons are going to be in some kind of open water. You get a random indoor try here and there, but not as common. Swimming in group, I talked about that. Sighting, I talked about that. The last thing is, does the race provide a swim cap? Your local grassroots race may not provide a swim cap and you're showing up with your own cap. Some races have a different colored cap for men and women. Some races have different colored cap for age groups. It just kind of depends. Some may just have a standard swim cap and that's what you have to wear and it's all the same color. Almost all the races I do, there's a swim cap provided, but I always bring extras just in case. You never know what may happen, and always have a few extra swim caps. All right. So swimming, another thing I would say is race morning. Try to get into the water most of the time you can. Sometimes there's rules where you can't get in the water. If that's the case, I would at least try to sneak down to the water and splash my face with the water, getting a little wet, trying to avoid that initial shock. Some races will just have a little corral where you can warm up. This photo here is Lake Placid. And on race day, they have a little corral where you can go in. So you can't get much distance, but you can at least get in the water, get a few strokes in, get wet as you prepare to line up. But yeah, if they allow you to practice swim, definitely practice swim. Even if it's going to be a little cold out or something, and we know we're going to be cold when we get out of the water, just make sure we've got a towel on the beach or something to wrap ourselves in until the race start. But I think avoiding that initial shock of the water is super important, especially because swimming for a lot of us is like going to be the hardest part of the triathlon. All right, questions. Jane, are you trying to talk? Because I can't hear you. Can anyone hear?
I've been on mute, but I don't hear anybody else talking.
Yeah, me neither. You want to put it in the chat? Okay, that's a great question. So she asked, is there usually an area on the side where you aren't surrounded by other swimmers? So I'm assuming you're talking about like the race start. Yeah, so each race is going to be a little different in how they have you line up, right? So some races you'll run into the water. Some places you'll be knee deep in the water. Some races you're going to be jumping off a dock. Very, very rarely for age groupers are you not floating in the water, like treading water. That's what I'm looking for. Very rarely does that happen for age groupers. Sometimes we see that in the pros where you're treading water waiting for the start. So some races may start in a massive group of females or your age group. In that case, it tends to kind of be a long line of people, a couple rows of people. If you're most comfortable, get to the edges of those. And I would say if you're trying to avoid folks, don't get to the edge of where the buoy is. So your fast competitive swimmers are going to be trying to hug those buoys as tight as they can. So you'll want to be on the side farthest from the buoys if you're looking just to swim by yourself. And when I first started triathlon, I think when a lot of people first started triathlon, like that's what I did. Like I stayed to the edge. I didn't want to get swum over. I just kind of swam my own race and did fine. The more you do, the more you get comfortable, the more you kind of throw yourself in the mix. Some people let the big initial wave go off at the gun and then they start. So everyone's kind of already in and they wait a minute in the back. So you definitely can find your own little area by yourself. And again, if we're just racing to have fun and to be out there and to be comfortable, like give it a couple seconds before you start. Find the edge. Like that's totally fine. And like I said, we all kind of I definitely started there. Swimming still kind of scares me sometimes. So that's I think that's all I wanted to say about that. Yeah, and I think too, like the more stakes the race has, the like more aggressive people tend to be, right? So for us in Connecticut, our Thursday night race isn't going to be as aggressive as maybe, USAT nationals, right? Where people are trying to qualify for worlds. Yeah, and then they may start the swim in heats. Like every race does something different, right? They by age group, by gender, by pick your heat. Ironman oftentimes does 2 to 4 people every 5 to 10 seconds or something, right? So you kind of all line up in this big line and beep, 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 next person jumps in, beep, 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 next set of people jump in and divide yourself that way. Some races will have you line up based on like your self-seeded time. People tend to think they're better swimmers than they are. So those things, it helps organize people a bit. But, I think that can get a little tricky, right? Depending on what kind of swimmer you are and where you want to be in the group. So, but I think for a lot of our local races, it's going to be some smaller wave start and find the edge. All right. Any other questions with swimming?
Actually, I have a question. This is
Yeah.
Sue. Um,
Hey.
yes, so I haven't tried a triathlon yet. I've done over 20 marathons, but I've always wanted to try a tri. But the swimming does kind of concern me.
Absolutely.
It's probably my weakest part although I've been swimming a while now, but it's always, I mean, I've been out on the open lake,
Yeah,
been in the pool. The pool seems to be a safer haven for me because I can always put my feet down.
for
But
sure.
um, the swimming part of things, do you, well, actually, the race, do you recommend doing a smaller race rather than a large, like more popular
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
qualifier?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think everyone will have a different opinion on this. I am like super old school in the sense where I think like progression is gonna like give us the biggest chance for success and allow us to have us the most fun. And what I mean by that is like picking a small local race first, right? Something where you've got some friends going, it's kind of grassroots, not crazy competitive, right? Then we like that, then maybe our next race um is the bigger race in our state. What state do you live in, Sue?
I'm in Connecticut. I'm
You're in
just right
Connecticut.
out in
Perfect.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm not that far from Glastonbury. I'm in Tolland. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. So we have like in Connecticut, we have these weekday, like Thursday night races in the summer, which like you'll hear us like rave about because they're like the best things ever and people are awesome and they're inexpensive. The only kind of downside is like they're Thursday nights. So like depending on your job, it may not be ideal. But there are great like local sprint races in Connecticut too. So even though like some of our Connecticut races are USAT sanctioned, that doesn't automatically mean they're like thousands of people, right? They just like what that means is you're probably going to get some folks that are just a little more competitive because they may be trying to get a spot for nationals or get points for something or whatever. Um, so yeah, around here we can definitely give you plenty of options to like start small for sure. Um, and make sure you have fun and like set yourself up for success, right? And then like, hey, you can have fun and travel and things like that. Even in Connecticut, we're lucky you can go to Massachusetts, and do a race and it's still not, it's not that much of a drive, right? So we've got some good stuff around here we can for sure get
Mhm.
you going
I wish
at.
I would have started earlier in my
Yeah.
in my, I guess, quote, running biking career because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
getting
yeah.
older now, and I wish I wish I just would have gone back and done one already, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
haven't.
yeah.
I had other things going on in my life, so.
Yeah, no, we'll for sure get you to one. We did a try program last year and we had a woman in it who was retiring that year and wanted to do her first triathlon. So she was like in her 60s and I thought that was
Oh,
like the
nice.
coolest thing ever. So
And there's
um
hope for me.
absolutely. No, you found a great group. And like, even after this call, like, please reach out. Like, we have so many women on here that are like willing to go swimming with you, willing to give you tips, willing to help you at the first race. It's, we have a super, super, super cool community. I think we are so
Okay, great.
lucky. So yeah,
Thanks.
we'll get you at a smaller race and let you have some fun and then you can get excited and go from there. I'm always impressed that people like have never done triathlon and they go like right into an Ironman and I'm like, "Oh my God, it took me like 8 years to do that." But I guess some people do it. It's more of like a bucket list thing for them, which is fine. But I would say I have like my views are just like much more traditional and I like the progression of things more and I think gives you a better chance for like enjoying yourself. So, all right. Any other swim things? Okay. So T1, so those are our transitions. Transition 1 and transition 2. Transition 1 is obviously going to be our swim to our bike. So, majority of the races, your transition is going to be in the same location. There are a couple of races. Again, these tend to be longer distance races where they're in two different locations. That makes things a little more logistically challenging. But it's not the end of the world. I've done it. You just kind of have to lay out your things a little differently. Big thing for transition is make sure you're good at finding like where your bike is. So some races will have you have like, you'll have an actual assigned number. So like whatever your race number is, there's that number on the rack, and that's where your bike has to go. Other races, it's first come, first serve. Regardless, you need to make sure you know how to get to your bike. Seems like a really easy thing until you come out of the swim and you're out of breath and you're a little stressed and you got to find your bike, and then you're like, where the heck is my bike? Right? So it gets better with time, but at first, like, you're gonna think I'm crazy, like, how can't this girl find her bike, right? But I'm telling you, when you get out of the swim, things are a little different. So we often like to find permanent landmarks, and what I mean by that is garbage cans can move. People can move garbage cans. So if we're like banking on the garbage can at the end of our row of bikes, may not be there when we get out of the swim. So trees, banners, things like that, something that's a little more like permanent to try to find your spot. I also like walk my transition stuff, right? So when I put my bike in the morning, or go to lay my stuff out, I will pretend like I'm coming out of the swim. I'll walk into transition. I'll walk and try to find like the best way to get to my bike, how I'm going to walk out of my row, where the exit is, and so on. So don't be afraid to kind of like give yourself a walkthrough. In transition, you know, we're getting rid of all of our swim stuff. We're putting all of our bike stuff on. Big thing with the bike is the helmet has to be on and clipped before you even move your bike off the rack. Again, local races, no one's going to hound you for it. It is a safety thing. There'll be people probably like yelling at you. More serious races, that like can be a penalty. The helmet has to be on and clipped before that bike leaves the rack. In their short races, you know, we're not going to be doing a whole lot in transition. We're going to try to get our stuff on and get cruising. The longer the race, the more things like sunscreen we need, nutrition we need to carry. Your longer races are going to have bathrooms in transition. So the longer the race, the more time you can spend in there. The shorter the race, we don't need a whole lot. Get in and out of there. More competitive you get in triathlon, the shorter the distance, races can be won or lost in transition. Obviously, for us, that's not the end of the world, but for some people, they live or die by transition. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it tends to be a small area we can put our stuff. So just try to be considerate of those around us. Only bring what you need. And you really don't need a lot of stuff, right? So the more stuff we have, I think the more confused we're just going to make ourselves. Know where the entrance and exit is, and then the mount and dismount line. So just like you need your helmet on and buckled before the bike leaves, you cannot get on the bike until the mount line. That's super important. Again, the bigger the race, the more serious that's going to become. But again, it's all a safety thing. And then when you dismount, you need to dismount your bike before the dismount line. Again, penalties can happen for this at bigger races. All of these things are safety concerns, because you're not going to be the only one getting on and off your bike. Okay, questions about transitions. And transitions is one of those things you'll just get better at with time. The more you do it, the more you practice. Set it up in your yard and practice. Time yourself. Race with a buddy in practice, right? You can have a lot of fun doing transitions. All right, on to the bike. So here, few things. So just like in triathlon, we swim, bike, and run in the same outfit. So I told you the swim outfit, triathlon suit, is designed to be wicking. So when we get on the bike and we start cruising along, the suit's going to dry off really fast. And again, they do have a chamois, but it's not as nice as the chamois we tend to train in. So for most people, and what I would highly recommend, is our day-to-day bicycle kit is going to be different than our racing kit. Even if you're not, you know, people are going to say, oh, but I'm not competitive or this and that. No, we want to be a little more comfortable when we're training. That's what it's designed for. When we race, you know, we just have an outfit that we can swim, bike, and run in, where our day-to-day cycling kit, we're not really going to run or swim in that, because it's like wearing a diaper is the best way to describe it. So you can see in like all my pictures, I'm pretty much wearing a kit that has sleeves and it's one piece. This has evolved for me over the years. I started triathlon and wore a two piece. Then I went to a one piece sleeveless, and now I'm in a one piece sleeved. Um, there's all sorts of reasons for this. I wouldn't stress out too much about it. Um, I mean, we can get into like aerodynamics and all this craziness, which is we don't need to stress about it. You just need a triathlon kit in some form or fashion. Find what's comfortable for you. Um, I think the longer the distance, the sleeves are nice because you're in the sun a longer time, sunburn, things like that. I turn into a lobster. So the sleeves are nice for that. It's comfortable for me. My kits have like pockets that I can put nutrition in. I'm on a team, so I just tend to race in a team kit. But there's a lot of great options out there, and if you need help picking out a kit, please reach out to me. I'm an easy person to find, and all my information's at the end of this too. Um, but we can help you get a kit and get something that's comfortable. Okay, bikes. Your triathlon bike versus a road bike. This is another thing. You don't need this fancy schmancy bike to compete in triathlon. Like, we want you to come out and race in triathlon with what you have, and we want you to have fun. So, if you're doing the local race and all you have is some kind of hybrid bike or a mountain bike, come on out, come do the race. You're going to have fun. Now, if we're going to step things up a bit and we really like triathlon and we want to invest in a road bike, great. Again, we don't need the top of the line bike to do this. Difference between road bikes and triathlon bikes. So road bikes are going to have what we call like your drop down handlebars. That's kind of like the traditional bike that we think of for the road. Those are nice because your shifting and brakes are all where your hands go, which are like the hoods of the bike. Road bikes are also great for group rides and things like that. So I think a lot of people, if they get into triathlon, their first bike purchase is a road bike for a triathlon instead of a triathlon bike. The longer distance you go, the more serious you want to be. Yes, a triathlon bike has its benefits. So in these pictures, I'm in a triathlon bike, which has an aerodynamic position. It's also comfortable in certain parts of the race to be down in those aero bars like I am in these pictures. Triathlon bikes are not the best bike if you can only own one bike. You're very limited, and it's a very aggressive bike for it to be your only bike. So I think also a lot of people that have triathlon bikes do have a road bike or a gravel bike. Like, they have another bike too that they ride and train on in the off seasons. So yeah, triathlon bikes, more aerodynamic, can be more comfortable over longer distances. And a lot of triathlon bikes, when you're in aero like this, you can only shift and you cannot brake, which is why I say they're like not great for group rides because it can be a little dangerous. The fancier, well, we'll leave it at that. So you have to come out of the aero position to brake. So the braking is like those things you can see on the sides. So that's why triathlon bikes can be a little dicey depending on the situation you're in. So that's kind of all you need to know about triathlon bikes. Again, if you're ready to purchase your first triathlon bike, please reach out. I can help you and give you the advice I've learned. Another option a lot of people do is like they get the road bike because that's like what makes more sense. And then you can do clip-on aero bars. So just like I'm in aero here, you can do clip-on aero bars. You wouldn't be able to shift in there. You would still have to come out and shift like you normally would on your road bike, but that at least like gives you some of that comfort and some of that like aerodynamic advantage that a triathlon bike does. So don't let the bike stop you from doing a race. We want you to come out and race in what you have. Clip-in versus flat pedals. So again, you can race in your sneakers. That's totally fine. Plenty of people do that. When you clip into your bike, that gives you a little more power in the pedals. it can help over the long run, right? Clipping in is a big scary thing to learn. But once you do it, it kind of becomes second nature and it definitely has its benefits. But you don't need to do that in order to race. You can race on flat pedals in your sneakers, and that's totally fine. Shoes. So this is like shoes is a big topic. You can be on your flat pedals and your sneakers. You can have your regular road shoes you train in every day. You can have triathlon shoes, which is I'm wearing. You can see that pretty clearly in this top picture. Um, they're Velcro, so they're really quick to get on and off because in transition, sometimes people want to be quick. And they're like very open to allow your feet to dry. So again, you're coming from swimming to get on the bike. Um, that gets into like the sock debate. I don't wear socks racing on my bike. So these triathlon shoes dry out my feet, and then when I run, I wear socks. Um, but again, this is all kind of like little nuanced things of triathlon. You can wear socks in your regular shoes, you can wear sneakers, whatever is going to get you out there to race is what we want you to do. Helmets, obviously a required thing to race. If you don't have a helmet, you can't race. Helmets, again, you can, have your most basic helmet to like a very aerodynamic helmet. If you're going to any kind of sanctioned race, you're most likely going to see people with these like crazy long helmets and visors and all sorts of stuff. Don't be intimidated by it. You see the helmet I race in, it's just a regular old helmet. So people do all sorts of things there. They have to have a helmet to race. And your helmets expire. So if you haven't gotten a helmet in the last 3 to 5 years, you probably want to get a new helmet before you race. Please, 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 please. All right, tires. So obviously, I think most of the triathlons folks on this call are going to be doing are on-road triathlons. You're going to be riding on pavement. A smoother tire is going to be more ideal. It's going to be a little quicker, a little less rolling resistance. Again, if you only have a hybrid bike, don't let a tire stop you from coming to race. But the more and more you get into it, these are things that like we want to be paying attention to. So a smooth tire, they tend to be skinnier tires, right? That's another thing that's evolving a bit in our sport. But in general, road bike tires are definitely going to be skinnier than your mountain bike or your gravel bike. Flat kit. So we always have a chance of getting flats when we're out riding. Chances are we'll want to carry some tools with us on our bike. Even if we're not experts at changing a flat, oftentimes there's nice people that will stop, or maybe there's some race support on the course that can stop and help you out. But it's always good to have what you need just in case. Variety of different ways you can carry that. A lot of people use like a seat pack. Some people like they make like a water bottle that all of your stuff can go in, and it goes in a water bottle cage. Triathlon bikes tend to have a lot of integration with those kinds of things. So there'll be like a designed little pocket for all that stuff somewhere on the bike. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, if you want help with a flat kit, let me know. We can kind of give you the specifics of what you would need, but it's tire levers, CO2, an extra tube. There's also this whole other realm of like tubeless, which I'm like not trying to confuse you, but again, if you've got tubeless or you've got questions or something, let me know because you'll need a few different things for your flat kit. On bike nutrition, so sprints, I wouldn't worry too much about eating during the race. Olympics, you need to eat something during the race. 70.3 and on, if you do not have a nutrition plan, bless your heart, you're going to have a very hard time finishing the race. So nutrition is super important. Good question is, how do we store all of this stuff that we have? Again, it's going to depend a lot on your bike and your race kit. Like I said, triathlon bikes tend to have a lot of integration with this stuff. So it's hard to see, but in this top picture, there's like a little black thing on the top tube of my bike. That's where my nutrition went on that bike. I also have like liquid nutrition, so a mix in some of my bottles. And then my kits have like these pockets in the back that I can put gels in too if I want to. Um, what I found over the years, um, another good thing that works is like putting gels or something down your sports bra. I know that may not work for everyone, but like they're right in the front and they're easy to get to, and you don't have to worry about like fishing around your back. Um, so sometimes I do that too, or I'll put my trash there because we'll get to the rules, but like littering is a big no-no, obviously. So I'll put my trash down my shirt until I get to an aid station where I can get rid of it. Um, Joy, thanks for hopping on. This is being recorded, so hopefully you can catch the end of it. She just wrote in the chat. Okay. Uh, okay, drafting versus non-drafting. Almost all the races we are going to be doing are non-drafting. If you're doing draft legal racing, you are going to be like very competitive, and I'm going to guess not on this call. So in the United States, most of our races are non-drafting, which means on the bike, you need to be a certain distance away from the bike in front of you. Um, that kind of varies depending on the brand of the race. But it's a very like subjective thing too. A lot of times it's like 12 meters, or they'll say like 5 bike lengths behind the other bike. But you just want some distance. So pretty much if you're close to the other wheel of the bike, you're drafting and they're like blocking some wind resistance from you, and you're going quicker at a lot less of an effort. So again, most of the races we're going to be doing are non-draft. When you get in someone's drafting zone, you have to pass them in a allotted amount of seconds. And then once you get past, you have to drop back. So a lot of rules that go into it. To do our local race, I wouldn't stress, but don't sit on someone's wheel. Please give them the distance. But there's not going to be someone there like giving you penalties and things like that, like there are in like sanctioned races. Um, Drafting's a big deal. So it's like a 5-minute penalty in sanctioned races. They do not mess around with it. But there is such a thing as draft legal racing. So that's like what you'll see in the Olympics is probably if you've watched triathlon in the Olympics, that's what it is. So they're riding in packs. It's a very technical type of riding. You kind of have to, takes a lot of practice to be good at that. And it's a little scary and one person messes up and a lot of times the whole group goes to shit pretty much. So drafting, it's cool, but it's a little scary. So most of us are going to be non-drafting. Don't sit on someone's wheel. All right, questions about biking? No. All right, we'll keep cruising here. All right, T2. So this is from our bike to our run, the second transition. Again, make sure you're finding your spot, you know where to go to rack your bike. Longer the race, the more likelihood we want sunscreen, nutrition, bathroom, things like that. And race belt. So on the bike, we don't need to wear anything on our bodies that has our number. Some races will give you stickers for your bike that has your number on it, and those have to go on the bike. It's like not an optional thing if they give you the stickers, and there's certain spots where they have to go, but there'll be some kind of diagram that shows that. Other races don't give you numbers for your bike, and that's fine. But when you run, you have to wear the number, like the sheet that they give you that has your number on it. Sue, you're coming from a running background. I'm guessing you like pin the number on somewhere. In triathlon, we often have race belts. So the number is like buttoned onto this belt that we just put around our waist in a clip. It's a little quicker, right? We're not going to be in transition with these like little pins, like trying to put the number on. So that's pretty much what it's for. Some race belts are like fancy and they've got little spots for your gels and stuff. If you're into that, great. But yeah, you need that number on. Super important. I've done one race where I had to wear my number on the bike out in California because we were riding through a military base. So it was like a heightened security thing. But I've never heard of another race where you have to wear your race belt on the bike. Again, you would definitely know if that was the case because everyone would be talking about it because it's very, very different from standard triathlon. And then again, know where the entrance and exit. So where are you biking into and where are you running out? Those tend to be like at opposite parts of the transition, just like for the flow of traffic. So just make sure you know what direction to leave when you're doing that. I guess another thing for our runners in the group, a lot of times your race like bib has the timing chip on it. In triathlon, the important thing to note is you can see on my ankle in this picture, that's our timing chip. So that stays on for the swim, bike, and run. Um, and usually like left ankle is the standard. Um, I'm sure there's a reason for that, but I don't know what it is. But yeah, you have to wear the little ankle strap is how they time you in triathlon. And then you have to return that at the end or they like fine you or something. Like I don't even want to know how much it costs. All right, then we have the run. Well, I guess was there any questions about T2? I think it's very similar to T1. It's just different stuff. Okay, so running. Shoes. Obviously, I feel like a lot of people have like a running background that get into triathlon, but if you don't, and this is like going to be your first time getting into some run training, you definitely want some run shoes that fit to you and that are going to serve for however your feet are made. So I would highly recommend going to a running store if you hadn't for at least your first pair of shoes so they can help you out. And then from there, you kind of know what you like and what you don't like. Um, Another like weird thing triathletes do is we've got these little like bungee cord laces you can kind of see in the picture. So my foot slips in and out very quickly. Again, maybe not important for this chat. The more competitive you get, the quicker you want these things to be. And this just helps get your foot in and out a little quicker. So I use a brand called lock laces, and then you just take out the old laces, you put these in, and then you can kind of adjust it, but it's a little quicker in transition. Don't need it to race. You can still tie your shoes. That's no problem. Race belt. So you got to wear the race belt. No, do you like something on your head? A hat, a visor, sunglasses, headbands? What do you like? I think a lot of people wear like something to protect from the sun and the sweat dripping all over the place, but not everyone does. But something to consider. And like I keep saying, the longer the race, like the more important some of this like sun protection stuff becomes. Watches, if you've got any kind of running watch, wear it, track things. I have a watch and a bike computer. People do all sorts of stuff. They've got a one watch that can kind of track everything. I like using my watch for the swim, my bike computer for the bike, and then my watch for the run. So I kind of have like 3 different files when I finish a triathlon. That's just like what works for me. Or you don't need a watch, you don't need to track anything, and they time you, and that's great too. But I know a lot of us like our data and to upload it and hit challenges and stuff. So, all right, the socks versus no socks, another like big debate on the run. Very competitive people in short distances aren't going to put socks on. For me personally, in sprints and Olympics, I don't usually wear socks. And then anything longer than that, I definitely wear socks. Also, like if the race was going to be cold, like I'm racing this weekend, I'll probably like to seeing how the weather's looking. I may put on socks just to be a little warmer. Obviously, this is something you would want to practice before you race for blisters and things like that. Because if your shoes are going to give you blisters, you're definitely going to want to wear socks. But again, I think most people starting out are going to put socks on, and that's totally fine. Water, there may be some on-course water, there may not be. I run with a little handheld, as you can see in these pictures. It's a comfort thing for me. I know I always have some water. I also carry some gels in there, and the way my nutrition plan works, I may not always be at an aid station when I want to be or whatever. So I carry that little handheld water and I shove a bunch of nutrition in the little pocket. Um, but I also stop at aid stations on the runs too, just to get some more fluids in me. Um, I can give you my little spiel about aid stations. Depending on the race will depend on how many aid stations they have, if they have any at all. Um, in your longer races, you're going to have aid stations very frequently. I'm a big fan of it's okay to walk the aid station to get in the fluid and nutrition you need. The few seconds that you quote unquote lose walking the aid station, you are going to gain because you're fueled and hydrated. Um, it's a big misconception that like people don't walk in triathlon, and I am here to tell you that I'm like kind of competitive and I walk aid stations and I sometimes run walk hills and it's all okay. And we all do it. And there's a method to our madness. And that's my spiel. People think I just like zip around these courses and I like laugh because I walk every aid station. So, um, I'm a big fan of aid stations. You got to do what you got to do in there. You got to get what you need and then you keep on trucking and it's better in the long run. Um, yeah, so I think that's running. I think most of us are like the most familiar with running, I'm gonna guess, and you just need some shoes and you're good to go. So do we have questions about the run?
I have another question. Sorry.
Yep. No, this is exactly what this is for.
On the run,
Mhm.
um, you say you actually run with no socks. I don't know how you can do that. But I understand why, because it's easier to when you transition. Have you done? You obviously have done both because you said that you've done ones that are shorter distances than and then you don't wear the socks.
Yeah.
So 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 shorter distance in the run meaning what?
Yeah, so like 5K, 10K. So 5K
Okay.
again, and this is just like me personally, and it just like when you see people not wearing socks, you don't think it's crazy, right? So like again, most people starting off, I wore socks all the time. The more competitive I got with myself, then I didn't. So like 5K, I personally definitely don't wear socks. 10K kind of depends. And then a half and a full, I'm for sure wearing socks.
Okay. All right. I just
So
making sure I could see you doing a 5K without socks
yeah,
and maybe even possibly a 10, but
right.
all of the marathons that I've ever done, I'm glad that I had some socks
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
I wish I actually could have changed my socks.
Yeah. Well, and that's like I guess the cool thing in like Ironman racing, right? So full distance where you're doing a full marathon, you get a personal needs bag, right? And I
Mhm.
when I did my first one last year, I put socks in that bag because I was like, I don't know, like you dump water on yourself, your socks are going to be wet. Am I going to start getting a blister because of that? Right. Like all
Right.
these things that like I don't really worry about in a half marathon because never had an issue, I guess. So I didn't worry about it. But then I'm like, oh, I'm going to double this. Am I going to have all these issues now? Right. And so that's the cool thing about a full is you get a bag at the halfway point to like have your
Mhm.
emergency things in it.
And so when do you start to actually tank, like feel like you're not going to make it in any of these sort of triathlons? Because
Yeah.
I mean, in the marathon, you get like a little bit of a lull at like
My
mile 21, and you
mile
need
20.
something to
Yeah.
get you to the end.
Yep.
So like where does that come in a triathlon? I
Yeah,
guess it depends
so
on the distance, but
yeah. It's definitely gonna depend on the distance. I think so the one I guess like bigger thing that's important to note about triathlon is the the bike to run is something we call like a brick workout and something you should practice. So like you go on a long bike ride or like a harder bike ride and you get off right away, you put your running shoes on and like you go run a mile, right? Because it feels
Mhm.
very different than you would think. Your legs feel like lead when you first do it,
You're
right?
right,
And you're like, how on earth
right,
like go from this one position to this other position and it feels really weird and like you don't like you've never ran in your life, right? So I think
yeah.
for people just starting out, that's like a little weird at first, whereas like you can make it 21 miles before you start feeling a little bad on the run. But I think in for triathlon, it's a lot of the same thing, right? Like near the end, in triathlon, we still talk about mile 20 of the marathon is when you hit the wall, right? Like so it's all kind of like
Right,
the same concept. But I think starting out that bike to run is something a lot of people underestimate. It's just like very different positions and what you're doing, and your legs are like, excuse me, what? What do you
right,
want me
right,
to do
right.
right now?
I think
So
for me, it's more sitting and then getting tight on the bike and then getting into
yeah,
the run just to loosen
yeah.
up for like a mile.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like the more like ailments your body has, right? I think the more complicated a lot of this stuff can become, based on like what gets sore in you or what hurts and things like that. But I think in marathons, right, like nutrition is important, but like triathlon, like I said, probably like Olympic distance on, like you need to have some kind of nutrition plan. Like you really
Right.
should not be just drinking plain water and having one gel before the race, right? Like there needs it's becomes very comprehensive in triathlon, and eating enough. I- Again, I don't know, like I've done one standalone marathon. Running is not my jam. I will bike all day long, but running is not my favorite. Um,
I don't
but
usually
there's
eat through I don't usually eat through a marathon. I'll have
okay.
gels and I'll drink, but I can't do the whole eating thing like people can do.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's like nutrition becomes really important in triathlon. A lot of people talk about it. The numbers like people are throwing out now is like, at the bare minimum 60 grams of carbs an hour. Like
Wow,
it's so, and again, and the 17.3 in fulls, it's super important, but Olympics, I still would have a plan. I mean, you're out there still for 3+ hours for
right.
most of us. So, that's a long enough time and the heat and things like that. Um, but yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, it's the thing.
Thanks.
The more serious you get, we can help a little bit because it's a lot of trial and error too. That's something I for sure overhauled last year, to do my full was nutrition because I was like really struggling the second half of the half marathons. Like the last 10K, I was just like surviving. And I was like, well, I can't do this in a marathon, so I need to figure something out.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Hunter, when you get out of the water, how well do you dry yourself? Like
I don't.
not even the
Yeah.
feet.
No. So, um, I was saying I don't because I have triathlon specific shoes, right? So my feet just like slide right into them, and I've never had an issue with like a rock in my shoe or something. I say that I'm gonna go race this weekend and I'll have like a rock in my shoe, but I've never had any like issues per se. I think usually kind of your feet get dusted off. I mean, if for whatever reason they're like particularly dirty, maybe I would like put my hand to them. Um, the only time I would probably consider drying off a little if it was going to be a particularly cold bike and you needed to like add a vest or warmers or I don't wear socks on the bike, right? So like maybe like to put the socks on, you'll need to dry off your feet a little. Um, but that's like, the kit, you don't get out and the kit's like soaking wet, right? Like that kind of like it dries fairly quickly. So the only thing I would consider maybe is like your feet, if you're putting socks on, that would make sense. Just have a little handheld towel in transition. And then, if you're going to have a really cold bike, which that does happen, and you need warmers or a jacket or something, and it might be worth drying off a little.
How about when you get out of the water and you get on the bike?
Mhm.
Are you cold at the very beginning of the bike? Because like I know that I'm not gonna get hot till like I'm like towards the end of the bike, right? And
Yeah,
like
yeah. It
I
kind of
get you
all
cold.
depends. Yeah, like I would say sometimes my toes get cold. But other than that, I haven't had, nothing where it's like inhibiting my ability to like race at my level, right? Yeah, maybe you're like, ooh, that's a little cold, but it's not like holding me back from doing anything. Excuse me. But I've never had a race to date where it has been like a particularly cold day, right? Or like a rainy day, like a cold, rainy day, like that happens to folks and like that becomes very different. But in that case, like I would personally like be taking more time in transition to make sure I had what I needed, because rather be a little warm than like hypothermic on the bike. So, that has happened at some races for some folks. I guess I've just picked the right ones so far. I don't know. But
Another question, when you do your open swim practice,
yep.
do you bring a buoy or something? Do you tie
Yes.
something
Yeah,
on
that's
your
a
leg?
great point for sure. So yeah, they have I don't even know what they call them besides a swim buoy, but it's like a strap that goes around your waist and then it's like a buoy out the back. And some of them
Yeah.
are like dry bags too.
Inflatable.
What'd you say?
I had one that was inflatable, but they don't
Yeah.
last.
Yeah, mine just kind of stays inflated. I guess I could deflate it, but I'm lazy and I'm not going to inflate it every time. But it's good because you can, like, I like it to rest. So when I open water swim, I'm usually doing some kind of workout. So like when I get the break, I like sit on the buoy, and then it's also good for visibility. So I would for sure recommend getting one of those. And I think in the scheme of things, that's like one of the more inexpensive products we can buy for triathlon. But I think, and especially for the lake practice swimming, at Lake T, we're lucky because there's not motorboats, but a lot of lakes do have motorboats. So that's like, you want to be visible to those folks. So, and again, it's another safety thing. It's going to keep you up if you start having an issue.
And
So
what was the thing? How do you track your data for each individual event? Can you say that again?
yeah. So I use Garmin products. So I actually have like a triathlon watch through Garmin, but I use a separate bike computer through Garmin. So for me, I like the bike computer because it's right in front of my face. And just to confuse everyone more, I use like Power to track like my biking and my effort. So a lot of times for races, I have a plan to stay within a certain amount of power. And when that's right in front of my face, it's a lot easier than constantly needing to check my watch. So I wear my watch the whole time, but I track it for the swim. I save that as I'm running. I get on my bike. I start my bike computer. I save that as I'm finishing. And then I go back to my watch for the run.
Because I have a Garmin Phoenix, right?
Yeah,
And so
that's
I
what I've
have
got
the
too.
individual event, but I
Yeah.
don't have anything that would say like triathlon, right? So I'll have to do an individual
Well,
workout.
no, I think the Fenix should have a triathlon specific
Mode?
thing. You might be able to add it, because what the triathlon function does is like every time you hit the lap button, it's like going to the next thing for you,
Oh,
is like
nice.
what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
So like you can use it for all of that. I personally never have. I don't
Okay.
know.
I have to check it out.
Yeah,
This is
but
a pretty
the
fancy
Fenix is
one.
new enough that it should have that
Yeah.
triathlon setting. You might just need to like, it might not be like automatic in there. You know how you can add
Right.
things to it?
The menu. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
cool.
and it might be worth just like playing around. And again, some people like the data, others don't. I'm at the point in my like triathlon career where I like use the data to race. So it's like a little more important to me, but I think just starting out, it's fine. So, all right, getting to the end here. Okay, so nutrition, we've talked about this already some. Pretty much everyone should be kind of finding some type of electrolyte mix. And the more warm it gets out, the more important this becomes. So that's getting those salts into that we need, and carbs and things like that. Salt tabs is another thing people play around with. Those hotter, longer days, that becomes more important. And we may not be able to drink enough mix, whereas a tab's kind of like a quick burst of what we need. As far as like what we're eating, people eat all sorts of things, from gels to chews to waffles to homemade snacks. Nutrition is so hard. we could have a talk once a week probably about nutrition, and people would still be like struggling and trying to figure out what to do and what works for them. It's a lot of trial and error, which like sucks, but it's like part of the fun of triathlon. There is this super cool website called thefeed.com, and they're cool because they carry like all the popular brands, and you can buy individual packets. So instead of investing in like a $50 box of gels, because that's like pretty much what it costs, you can buy the individual packet for a couple bucks to try it, try the flavor, try the brand. I try to do that a lot with Wow. It's like I buy nutrition all the time, or people give me nutrition that they don't like to like give away to folks, because it's just something you just have to keep trying. And I'm still like always open to trying brands people suggest. Like I have my little go-to formula, but if someone, gives me something or tells me something is great, I'll go out on the feed and buy a couple of them and try them. So outside of a sprint distance triathlon, you should probably always be eating something at some point in the race. In a sprint, I would say like beforehand, you should definitely be eating something. Training nutrition versus race day nutrition. Obviously if we're going out for like a 30-minute run, we're not really going to be able to like simulate race day nutrition. So personally, what I do is on my long runs and long bike rides is when I try my race day stuff. I pack nutrition, I'm eating, I feed gels every hour and things like that. Training, I just kind of focus on like water and electrolytes and things like that. But we definitely want to practice on those longer efforts, eating some stuff that we're into to see if it works with our stomach, and what kind of feedback we're getting, if we feel energetic enough. Some of these things have caffeine in them, some don't. I know people have all sorts of sensitivities and allergies, which kind of makes things more complicated when it comes to nutrition. But there's a lot of great brands out there. Thefeed.com is great. What is my computer doing? We don't need to install this. Ah. All right. Here we go. Are we back? Okay. So pre-race, during race, post-race. So yeah, coming up with a nutrition plan, what you plan on eating, trying to stick to that. Usually about 15 to 30 minutes before the swim start, I have a gel. And then I'm not going to bore you with my nutrition plan. If you're like curious about what I do, I'm more than happy to chat with you off this talk about it. But it's, again, we all kind of do something different, but you need a lot of carbs and you need salt and all that good stuff. Pre-race dinner and breakfast. I think like any kind of race, that stuff is important. And then just like fueling for your body and your goals, right? Again, it's what works for me may not work for you. I can tell you I am using right now CIS gels, which is pictured here, the SIS, and then Precision Hydration, which we have a discount code for through WOW. Precision, I really like for their like different electrolyte mixes, and I was able to do a talk with them to get kind of like a plan for what I was doing and like what I should be doing for drink mixes. That's like a free service they offer. And then their gels are not flavored, which is like another fun thing that happens in triathlon. It's like the more gels you eat, you get this thing called flavor fatigue, and then you like don't want to eat anything, and that's bad. So these are things you learn as you go. But the precision gels are not flavored, which is helpful. If you have problem with taste or the fake taste of things or whatever. So that's what I use if anyone's curious. And then I also like the scratch drink mix I have. I'm looking at my like nutrition shelf right now. I've got a lot of scratch up there. So that's what I'm using. Again, more than happy to talk about it if you've got more questions. All right. Let me keep cruising here because we're getting close on time. So there's a lot that goes into triathlon, right? trying to figure out what to do, get all your questions answered. How do you train for all the different sports, and what time do you have with like your normal daily life stress and family and all that good stuff, right? So some people want to invest in coaching or an online plan. There's all sorts of options out there. Some things to consider are cost. Are we looking to, have this coach year round? Are we looking just for the summer months, or a plan year round or for the summer months? There are a lot of online plans which are kind of like, here's your, like, I guess the thing I can think of is like the Couch to 5K plan, right? They have stuff like that for a triathlon too. Or you can like join your local tri club or talk to people like us, and we can kind of give you some guidance with like the tips and tricks that, we have and learned. Again, you don't need a coach by any means to do triathlon. But if you've got certain goals and you've got a few extra dollars burning a hole in your pocket and you want to find a coach, then rock on. I can give you a lot of really good recommendations. I think the benefit for me for coaching is I don't have to think about what I need to do each day. I like every Sunday I text her, this is what my week looks like, and she like plugs it into the plan and I just do it, right? So for me, I don't mentally have to think about like, what am I going to do today? What do I do this? And then if I have a bad day or something happens, or I don't know, I got bad cramps or something, I text her, hey, this is going on. And she goes in and she adjusts it and I'm good to go. So it's like mindless for me, which is why I have liked it. But yeah, there's a lot of different options. Again, if you are serious about getting a coach or want some like online plans or something, it can kind of point you in a few directions. Questions about that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So is the coaching strictly coaching for training for a triathlon, or is your maybe your specific coach you also in like your fitness all year round to prepare for the triathlons?
That's a great question. So I have my coach more or less all year round. I found for me personally, if I don't take like a hard break from working out in triathlon, I'm going to be a disaster. So I usually take 2 months off for my coach a year at the end of the season. So historically it was November and December, but I got into some fun off-season bike things. So this year it was like December and January. So I don't use my coach. She doesn't upload things. I work out if I want to, when I want to, what I want to. So that doesn't look like a whole lot of movement for me. If I'm doing something, it's riding my bike. It is not swimming for sure. And it's most likely not running. So for me, I ride horses too. So I do that all year round. But yeah, but if I wanted to use my coach all year round, I could. I have just personally chosen that like I need those 2 months off and not having like feeling like I need to do something. But there are coaches that if you say like, hey, I've got this race in August, can you help me get prepped for it? Boom, they'll help you to August and then you're free to go, right? So there's all kind of different services coaches offer. Some offer, my coaches, I can contact her whenever I want to, right? Like it's open communication.
Is your coach local or?
She's out of New Hampshire.
She's out of New Hampshire.
Yeah. So, some of us have local coaches, some have like remote coaches, but we have like a platform where we upload. So again, this is like kind of why my data is important too, because she like sees all of that and can kind of, I've been with her for years, so she like knows me very well at this point too, with my different data. But yeah, there are options. Like remote coaches aren't bad. Like they don't need to watch you doing the sport. They're more like designing your workouts to like help you reach whatever your goals are. There are local coaches that do groups and things like that. There are coaches like Christine, you have a strength coach that then helped you with triathlon, I think.
Yes. Excuse me. I was eating a piece of corn.
Oh no, it's okay. I just know your coaching is like a little different than mine, but it's good to know.
It is. Yeah, no, totally. I wanted to jump in there a little bit too on two things that I really started triathlon later in my life too, like probably I think age 48 maybe or whatever. just as of like a year or two ago, I found a personal trainer, and really, and I still use her, and I really like using her because she's got more of a strength background. She's a amateur body lifter, weightlifter. And she also has some certifications in nutrition as well. So for me, it really works very well for me because she really helps to hold me accountable for certain things. So yeah, I could share that. I could share that her information too, if you want me to. Yeah, and she's local. She's in Bristol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have like open communication with her, or is it like a once a week call, or do you have?
I have very open communication with her. I communicate with her more through texting, actually.
Yeah.
Which it's that works really well for us.
Yeah.
So texting, and also doing some messaging even within the program, because I'm set up with her. So whatever workout she sets up for me, a lot of times, like swimming, biking, running, I've got that all synced up through my Garmin with her program. Plus, in addition to that, she helps me out with my nutrition as well. So she understands that as well. So for me, it's working out really, really nicely. So it's kind of a combination of the online application. I'm an online customer of hers. But she also does offer physical courses as well, because they have a gym as well. So if like you want to have a one-on-one, various equipment she's got, she'll help you with that too. So she's really good. I've enjoyed working with her for about a year and a half. She helped me get ready for Ironman Muscle Man. So I worked with her for a good solid year. And she surprised me by showing up there too, which I thought was very cool.
That was super cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's people like Christine's coach, Jane and Kathy, who are very involved with our group. They have their own coach. They have the same coach together, but there's another woman, Dina Grimaldi. She used to live in Connecticut and has since moved to Colorado, but she helps a few women in our group. So there's plenty of options. Usually what I do when people ask me, I send like all my recommendations and then let you decide what works best for you. And it's okay to interview coaches too. People, I think, get a little funny about that, but the person needs to work for you, right? And understand your goals and your lifestyle. Like, I'm a pain in the ass. Like, I don't sleep enough. I do 8 zillion things, and my coach somehow has to like manage all of this. And I like kind of want to be like decent. So she somehow manages all of this, and I do all right. So you have to find someone that like works for you and understands your lifestyle. So, and most coaches understand that, like if they aren't open to like a free consultation phone call, then I like wouldn't consider them as a coach, honestly, because like you need to like get to know them and they need to get to know you. And a good coach knows that and will allow that to happen. So
I would love recommendations. So anything that you can offer, I would love it.
Yeah. I'm assuming you're on Facebook, right?
I am.
Yeah. Can you just shoot me a message on there with your email, and at some point I will send them over. Then I won't forget to do it. You're welcome.
Okay.
And Christine, I think if Christine, message me your coach's like name and number and I'll send that over too.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. I know we're getting late on time, but I'll keep cruising as quick as I can. So training tips. So brick workouts, that's that thing I was talking about where you do a long bike or a hard bike and then you do a run after. The run doesn't need to be anything crazy, 5, 10, 15 minutes. It's kind of like get a mile in and get those legs turning a bit. Swim in open water prior to race day. I preached about that. Plan your schedule ahead of time, right? So if you're self-coaching or using an online plan, make sure you have a plan ahead of time. It's really hard to wake up early in the morning and be like, what am I going to do today? But if you already have the plan, you're more likely to do it and be successful. Practicing race nutrition, we talked about. This is a big point that Jane, who's big in our group, she usually says this, talking to your family and friends about the time commitment. It is a time commitment. You're training for 3 sports. The race takes up a good part of the day. So, hopefully our friends and family are supportive, but like, hey, I've got this goal. This is what's going on. All of a sudden I'm going to be working out X amount of hours a week. So that's important. Plan for an increase in food consumption. You get really hungry after you swim, and I don't know why, but that's a thing. The more hours you're putting in a week, you eat a lot of food. I eat like 2 breakfasts every day. So you got to plan for things like that. Find a local club or friends to train with, right? Us, the Hartford Extended Area Triathletes Heat, that's another big group in our area that a lot of us are on or work closely with. There's like a local Y, the Shoreline Y, this woman Chris runs a tri program out of there. So like find a local club or friends to train with. A lot of us at WOW are triathletes and like having friends to train with and are willing to meet up and help people. So we're a good group. Build up to the distances, right? We don't need to go be doing the sprint triathlon tomorrow. We start small, start in sizable pieces, work our way up. Understanding some basic bike mechanics. Christine is a great example of practicing this stuff all the time. I am a horrid example, and I should know more than I know. But it's good the more you're riding, and especially on your own, just having some understanding of the bike and how things work. And then tune-ups are important, right? Outside of our like yearly or twice a year tune-up, I like to have my bikes looked over before a big race too, just to make sure everything's dialed in. And to me, that's worth the few extra bucks because I want my bike working if I've like invested all this time and money to get out to a race. Rest days are important. Incorporate them into training. Again, some of us are better at this than others, but rest is important for sure. And then like recovery tools. So stretching, yoga. I've gotten into Pilates. I get a massage, saunas, things like that, right? All important, all self-care. Self-care is important. Sue, I'm a counselor too, so I won't get on my self-care speech, but a lot of our fun recovery things I think can be tied into that. All right, questions about any of the training tips?
I'll second the massages though, for sure, because that's something that I hadn't done for myself for a really long time. And I finally found a good masseuse that I've been going to for probably 6 months now. I just think it's really super important, just to take care of yourself, and just do that. You work hard and it's very helpful.
Yeah.
So, Jan, you want to?
Perfect. Jan, you want to tell us about your massage practice?
Oh goodness. Can you guys hear me now? Did I fix my audio?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, sure. I own East River Massage in East Windsor, Connecticut, and I definitely help athletes with injury recovery and relaxation and getting themselves ready for long events. I have a couple of athlete clients who train for like the Closer to Free ride every year. So I love it. I love my athletes. I think to echo you, Hunter, self-care is so important. I don't think we as women take the best care of ourselves sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah. All right. That's training tips. So other little random rules. So like littering, obviously, like we don't want to litter, sometimes something bounces off our bike or whatever, like stuff happens, but we don't want to be like intentionally throwing our goo packets on the course. So speed traps are sometimes seen on bike courses. I've only seen this in 2 or 3 Ironman races I've done. And usually what happens is the course has a pretty steep downhill and some kind of sweeping turn that's a little dangerous. So they'll set up a timing mat at the top of the hill and the bottom of the hill. And there's a set amount of speed that you can go down that hill for safety reasons. And if you go too fast, so they have it calculated where like how much time you should have between those mats. And if you're too fast, you're disqualified. So again, a lot of these rules, like they take very seriously in sanctioned races, but it's like for a reason. It's not because they want to be annoying. So that's the only time I've seen speed trapped, but I put it in there because it's a thing. No headphones, no cell phones. So can't be listening to music or podcasts or calling a friend during the run. With that, I don't train with this stuff. I mean, once in a blue moon, if I'm just kind of feeling a little dull, I'll maybe put a podcast on while I run, but the majority of the time I don't use any kind of music or stuff, just because I personally like to practice how I race. I know some people, music gets them through training, and that's fine. That works for you. But if you're like very dependent on music to get through your workout, that's going to have to change for a triathlon race. So kits, I already talked about sleeves versus no sleeve, drafting penalties. Outside assistance is another thing. You know, you can't have like someone handing you water bottles and things like that. Like an aid station is different. Like those people are volunteering, they're part of the race. They can hand you a cup of water, but you can't have like your family sitting there with like a table of goodies for you. So, all right. My final tips, visualize race day. I'm big into like visualization a lot when I train. I think about like running down that finish line and what it's going to feel like and how I'm going to feel and all that kind of stuff. Enjoy the process. Like triathlon should be fun. We should love it. We want you to do it more than once. So we should be enjoying the process. And if we're not, like, let's take a step back and figure out what's going on. Because it should be fun. Even though like the hard workouts and the hard days, most of the days should still be fun. Take the pictures. I love pictures. I love going to the race and like engulfing myself in like the town and the experience. Like all these pictures on this slide are like famous people in the triathlon world. And I have no shame in going up to them and talking to them and asking for their picture with them. And most of the time they love it. So, you know, I'm a big fan of like, you're there for the experience. Yeah, we can race and we can have fun and all in the same token. Explore the towns, right? So if you're traveling outside of the state, like go to the local spot in town, see what it has to offer, walk around the town, you know, like I think it's all part of the experience. Buy the memorabilia. Don't even want to know how much triathlon stuff I have that I probably don't need, but I have it all. So, you know, I think those memories are important. I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, sometimes I get in my feels, and I posted a thing the other day about like I'm at my desk and my goal board's here. My like Ironman trophies are in the middle. I have pictures from my first Xterra here. Like I think all of that is just like important and reminds us like why we do this and how much fun it is. Soak in the finish line. As excited we are to be done. It should be like a fun experience. If you've watched any finish line video of me, you'll know, do a dance down the finish line, do something, have fun, throw your hands up, get the finish line picture. We'll get to my favorite picture here in a second. And then you'll only get one first, right? We'll only get one first triathlon, one first sprint, one first Olympic, one first half, whatever it is, and like enjoy that and embrace that because it will only be one first. So this is my favorite finish line picture of like all time. And I'm like, one day when I'm in my own space, this is going to be blown up in my workout room. I can't tell you how many days I go back and look at this picture when I'm like having a bad day, because it just takes me like right back to this moment and like how special this like whole day was. So again, I buy way too much triathlon things and I always buy the pictures, but this is why, because you get really fun stuff out of it. All right. So this is my information. I'm assuming all of you are on Facebook. I'm guessing is how you found this, but you can text me, you can email me, you can Facebook me. I will get back to you. I love talking about this stuff, obviously, as we're like 2 hours into this. I love helping any way I can. And if I don't know the answer, I'll try to find the answer for some of my friends. But please, please, please don't be afraid to reach out to me. All right. So this is wow discounts. So if you want to take a screenshot or jot any of this down, I'll go through this quickly. These are people like we've partnered with or like have programs for like tri groups or cycling groups that like I joined for us. So a few things here about each of these. So Ready, Set, Go Adventures. They do some gravel races out of New Jersey and then the Macedonia Gravel Grinders in Connecticut. So I know this is a triathlon talk, but if you got a gravel bike, check out some of those things. Mad Alchemy sells socks and chamois cream. For those of you that don't know, chamois cream is a cream you apply to yourself, kind of where you sit on your saddle of the bike. It helps like reduce friction and reduce saddle sores. KOM Cycling has a bunch of different like bicycle mounts for computers and some like tubeless tire things. Zelios, they have chamois cream, sunscreen, shampoo, conditioner, all sorts of stuff. Road ID is a cool little thing that you can get engraved with like your phone number, emergency contact, allergies, things like that. So if God forbid there was ever an accident that you were involved in, someone could identify you and kind of get what you need a little quicker. Feisty. So Feisty is a media company that I partnered with this year as an ambassador, and I'm doing some of their like triathlon stuff on social media. So that's a discount code for you guys for tonight. They've got, you know, a fun little shop. They've got some great podcasts. They just launched a fueled course all about nutrition for active women. So I'm actively taking that, and a few women in our group are as well, but there'll be more opportunities for that. But they've got a lot of good podcasts, so check them out. Feisty Media. Precision Hydration, that's the fuel I use. They've got some good like sampler packs and things like that. Farm to Fork is a road ride. We have a discount for the one up in Vermont, which is in July. During the ride, you stop at various farms in whatever state the ride is. So for us, it will be Vermont. So you'll stop, have like the local snacks and keep on riding. Roka does wetsuits and sunglasses, things like that. And then Steep Endurance, they're doing a gravel bike ride and a mountain bike ride. So we got a discount code for those. I will also be doing the mountain bike ride course preview in July. I'll be posting about that soon. So even if you're not doing the race, you can still come ride in Norbrook with me. This is also on our Facebook page, but if you ever need this or have questions, shoot me a message. I can get you the discounts. Okay. Couple giveaways and then we'll be done. Let me get on here so I can get who's still on the call. 3 of us. Cool. So I don't know how we want to do this. I can draw names and we can pick. Let's see here. So we've got a couple of giveaways to Winding Trails. So that's an off-road triathlon. If you're curious about it and don't have a mountain bike or something, we can work on getting you one. If you have no desire to do that, it's okay. I can send you another prize. But we can use those for something else. It's no big deal. So getting my little pieces of paper. All right. First name. Jan. So do you want nutrition or Winding Trails?
Nutrition, please.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And everyone can get nutrition if that's what they want. I've got plenty. All right, Christine.
Should I go for 2 of them now?
2 Winding Trails. How many Winding Trails do you want to do?
Well, that's the mountain bike, right? What is that like?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
You want Winding Trails?
I'll do. Yep. I'll
All
go
right.
for it.
And Sue, you want nutrition or try an off-road triathlon as your first triathlon? Oh, I think you're muted. Well, there
Sorry
we
about
go.
that.
It's okay.
I think if it was a road try, I might take it and do that for
That's
my
fair.
first. But I think I'll go with the nutrition.
Perfect. And you said you're on Facebook, right?
I am. Yeah.
It said, yeah. So shoot me a message, reminding me about the coaches and with your address, and I'll get some stuff shipped out to you.
I sure will.
Or
Yeah.
if it's, you said you're in Tolland,
I am.
maybe I'll drop it off in your mailbox, depending. I
Oh,
go
no
swim.
kidding.
I go swim out that way, so sometimes that's easier.
Yeah. Where do you swim?
The Ellington Y.
Oh, okay. I go to Star Hill in Tolland and swim
Okay.
at the bubble. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks guys for hanging for the long haul. Does anyone have any final questions, comments?
Well, sounds really fun, but very intimidating. I'm not gonna lie.
It's a
Like-
lot of information.
I'm more concerned, like, granted, I don't have a 9-to-5 job, but like, how do you fit it all into 7 days
Yeah.
of training?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, like I'm really interested in maybe doing a duathlon starting instead of a tri, but
Yeah.
even then I'm like, how do you fit it all in?
Yeah, you think you get very creative with your time, right? And yeah,
I think that's why I haven't done one yet, because
Yeah.
I had my children and I'm working full time still, and
yeah.
all the time and all the training that you have to do, I just sort of stuck with the marathon because I could just run. And
One thing,
that was it. Yeah.
Run from your door and be there.
That's
But
right.
I feel like the amount of training is comparable to marathon or century training. That's just that you have to do 3 different things.
yeah, and
or-
I think that's the problem with triathlon, right? It's not the amount of time. It's driving to the pool, it's getting ready for the pool, it's driving back from the pool. Like it's all of like that stuff that adds up, right? Whereas, yeah, for a century.
But how much training do you do of each? I guess maybe this is another conversation for another evening. But so when I was trained for a marathon, you do it in steps, and you build on every week. You build on your
Yeah.
mileage. But with this, I don't know how you build on each one.
Yeah, so it kind of depends, right? Like, so yeah, starting out, you probably will build time, right? You're not going to jump in the pool and swim 3,000 yards, right? You're probably going to start a lot smaller than that and build up. And then once you get to, a lot of people are like, okay, this is the time I have a week, right? Is it 8 hours? Is it 10 hours? However many hours you have a week. And then you figure the pieces out from there, right? So I think like swimming is usually the most challenging one for folks because you have to drive somewhere to do it, right? I think, and you need to kind of be swimming more than once a week, right? Hopefully. So like at least twice a week, probably 3 times is like ideal to start, especially again, for most of us, swimming is the hardest part. It's like, we know how to swim, but we've never lap swam. It's a little scary to us, right? So like swimming, we need to get over a lot more than we do with the bike and run, usually for most people. If you grew up swimming, kudos to you. You have a step ahead of the rest of us. And then you just kind of get creative with your time. Like, what do you have for your days? Is there one day you can do some like longer stuff during the week? Usually us with like more traditional jobs, the weekends are for our long stuff because we're not working, right? So one day is a long bike, one day is a long run. But obviously that's not everyone's job. So sometimes, you have a Wednesday off, that's your long bike probably because that takes the most time.
What do you consider a long ride, and what do you consider a long run?
Yeah, I think so. That's like what builds, right? So just to give you an example, right now I'm training, kind of my target races are my 70.3s. So my first race is June 11th. I'm running in my long runs right now an hour. I haven't gotten too high yet, but I also don't train a high run volume, which is, again, I'm not going to get into it, but I don't train a lot run volume. The bike I'm doing, I think 2.5 hours right now. which is pretty close. The bike will take me a little under 3 hours in a race. But again, it like, so that's what builds, right? So maybe starting out, like you have a run background, right? So you're not going to have to put as much emphasis on the run. You can cut back on your run training, lean in more to that swim training because it's a little scary. And then the bike kind of fills in the places in the middle, right? So,
right, like work on the stuff that's weaker,
yeah,
right? Like work on the stuff that's harder.
yeah.
That, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly. So
you know,
like
if
for
you're- if
Sue,
you're-
who's training for marathons, right?
Right.
Like you're gonna cut, like if we want to do a triathlon and we really need to swim and bike, you're gonna cut your running back a lot because you kind of already have that. So like you're still gonna run, you're still gonna do a
Right.
long run, but not like you would for a marathon because you kind of already have that base and endurance. That's I do a lot of bike riding. And I don't do a lot of run volume, and I do okay not doing a lot of run volume, but that's like what works for me, right? That's like what keeps me healthy. I can do all right. I ran a half a marathon before Lake Placid. I did not run 20 miles before I did a marathon, and everyone like thought I was going to fail, right? And I didn't.
Nope.
But it's funny, like the chatter you hear after, and but again, this is what works for me, right? I don't need that run volume. The swim and bike kind of carry me over, and not running a lot keeps me healthy. So that's what works for me.
A lot of mental power too, I think, in these
Yeah.
things as you get more experience.
When you were talking, like I'm sorry, I'm kind of making this conversation go on a little too long because of
you're
all my
okay.
questions. When you say you're at the point right now where you're riding 2 hours and you're running an hour, so you base your time that you're out there and as far as minutes or hours as opposed to miles?
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
great question and a great observation. Yeah, so swimming, obviously we do by yards, but my bike
Right.
and run is all by time. People will be like, oh, how far did you bike today? And honestly, like I'm like, oh, 2.5 hours. Like I couldn't even
Right.
tell you how far that was.
Okay. So is that what like your trainer, like your coach tells you?
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Christine, do you do the same?
You know, I do mix it up, but as I've been progressing or doing my thing, I really, it depends on my mood and my mental on the particular day and the weather and all that stuff. But sometimes I will do that. I'll say, okay, I you know, and it's like seat time or it's foot time, right? It's like, all right, I want to be on my feet for an hour. And then it takes away that pressure or stress about, oh, I got to hit a certain mileage, you know? It's like, whatever you do, you do. And it's a little bit, for me, a little bit more relaxing. It's like, I'm on my feet for an hour. Awesome. I did that. You know, it doesn't matter what I did an hour. I did it. And I was on my feet for an hour. That's great. I was on the saddle for 2 hours. Awesome.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes
that would
it's
be
like
hard for me.
When you're on the bike,
I'm so used to calculating the miles. So that'd be hard for me.
And I'm sure there's people, I'm sure there's people that still use miles, but I don't know like the exact reason coaches do it, but like, you know, everyone on my team, we like talk in hours, and I don't know why that's a thing, but it is. But I think too,
mix it up.
Yeah, which is good. And like, you know what you can do in that time too, right? I know if I'm going on a 2.5 hour ride, I should be between this distance and this distance, right? Like, and your coach, like my coach knows that, but like the biking is, I guess the bike and the run, like it depends on where you're running too, right? I can run around my neighborhood and it's super hilly, or I can go to the airline trail.
I know.
But I think the other thing, Sue, to keep in mind for you with that run background is like you already have like an aerobic base, right? Like you're not starting with nothing. So I think like, yes, we need to get comfortable in the water, and we need to like get time in the saddle because that's different, and we need to get used to the saddle. But like you have this aerobic base that's like going to carry over, which is going to be helpful. And that's the cool thing about triathlon is they all kind of help each other. So like, hey, if you get injured, a lot of times people get injured like running, but they can still swim and bike, but they're not like totally screwed running because they still have this like aerobic endurance base from the other sports. So it is a lot, but they do help each other.
I've been doing a lot of them now. It's just I'm running more than the others, and I don't know how much more I should do of the others and less of the running. I guess that's what I'm stuck on.
Yeah, you know, like, and I think it's like everyone's going to have like a different opinion, right? But I think like if you can get to the pool 2 to 3 times a week, you know, if you, I don't know if you have days you can do doubles, like usually there's going to be a couple days where you probably have to do 2 workouts if we're like training for our
Right.
first triathlon. You know, I think biking, again, I mean, what do you have time for? 3 days a week, 4 days a week, and then the running, maybe, I don't know how much you run now, but like you can cut that back a little to lean into the other two. And we all kind of like, we all do that in our own like various ways too. Or like when we get an off season, like we do a little heavier, you know, maybe I do a little heavier run volume and a little less bike volume when I'm like not gearing up for a race to like try to improve the run time, right? Like my strength is cycling. So if anything can take a break, it's some biking for me. But I think right now it's just like doing like 3 days a week swimming, 3 days of bike, 3 to 4 days biking, 3-4 days running. I think the swimming is just always going to be the hardest thing to get into and to get there. And then like start slow. Like I would like definitely Google some like online stuff too. Like, well, I'll give you the coaches' names, but just like reading about other training plans. Because it is, you start slow. And even when I start back, like after my 2 months off, it's like so basic at first. I'm like, oh, this is nice. 30-minute run, 45-minute bike, you know, like it just, everything's like simple and easy. And then, you know, it progresses the closer to the race and the workouts come.
Gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate all your answers to your questions.
No problem.
It's a good conversation. Thank you.
Those Lake Terramuggis super sprints, I think that they're really awesome if you're just starting off and you just want to experience that, you know, it's just so low key, local, short distances, and it just gives you the flavor a little bit, you know?
Okay.
So Lake Terramuggis super sprints, highly recommend. If you just
and I can, I'll send you the link to those too.
I've heard a lot of what you're talking about. They're intimidating to me. So I'm safe in my running zone and not the rest of them, but I'm going to break through. I will.
The good thing about Lake T is like, I go to like all the Thursday night races. Christine goes to most. You'll meet Jane and Kathy, who are like huge advocates for triathlon. They help women so much. Like they'll be there. So like there's a lot of friendly faces that like are willing to like help you and like walk you through your first one. And it's just like, and that's what those races are for, right? It's like for people to just start.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let me know if you go. Let me know if you go and I'll meet up with you there. Really. It's just so it's such a friendly atmosphere. Well, everybody supports each other, really.
Yeah. I know of a couple other women who go to Lisa Barrett, I think she goes. And, and I think Jerry Ann Gallagher, she lives out in Glastonbury. She's an orthopedic.
Okay. Yeah, Lisa's great. Yeah, so like there's always people there. Then you get people like my dad that like walk around transition and are like, do you have questions? Can I help you? What do you need? And like,
it's very calming. Your dad is very calming. You know, just talking to him a little bit.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, so don't like, again, and even if you like I keep talking about Jane and Kathy because they help a ton in triathlon. They help. I mean, Kathy took a woman that was crying her first time in the open water to like completing a triathlon by the end of the summer.
Amazing.
So like these people, I like promise you, are like here to get women into the sport and to help you and like do whatever they can to like make it happen. So between all of us, we'll help and we'll be there. Jan like kind of knows us already, even though she's newer to triathlon. She at least knows our faces.
That's all amazing.
So cool. Well, thanks guys for being in for the long haul.
Sure.
Thank you.
Someone's gonna have a long recording to listen to. I'm mentoring this girl through like a program like countrywide, and she lives in Canada. And Tuesday, she also rides horses, which is like really funny that we got paired up. But Tuesday nights are her riding lessons, so she couldn't come on the call, but she's going to listen to this. So It's fun. I wish she could have came. She's super cool. But yeah, she's doing her first sprint in Canada somewhere in August.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, she's super cool. And then we like ride horses too. And I'm like, how did we get paired? This is awesome.
It was meant to be. Meant to
Yeah,
be.
the stars aligned.
Exactly.
Yep.
She'll have a
That's
good
great.
recording to listen to before our next phone call. All
That's
right,
awesome.
ladies. Well, thanks for coming.
Okay.
I'll work on getting
Thank
these
you.
prizes to you and we'll touch base.
you
Okay,
very
awesome.
much.
Guys, appreciate it. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Night, ladies.